Hello, everyone. I hope you will support the discussion in the comments and tell me what you would do if you found yourself in the situations I am going to talk about today. Since childhood, I had a clear understanding that my parents loved my younger sister more than me. I felt it in many ways, but I just didn't want to believe it. Yet, I kept noticing it over and over again. Fast forward to the future. While I was still in college, I worked a lot. I worked day in and day out because I had one goal: to buy my own house. I didn't think my first home would be a mansion right away. But I wanted to have my own place, even if it wasn't big, a place where I could finally set up my own workshop, and where I wouldn't have to fear that a landlord might want to terminate the lease, and I'd have to move all my things in a short time. I bought a house and invited everyone to the housewarming party, including my sister and parents. On the surface, they were all very happy for me, but I saw some envy. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't imagine my family envying the fact that I had worked hard for many years and had finally managed to buy my dream home. I thought something was wrong with me, that I was a bad person for thinking that my father, mother, and sister were secretly jealous while outwardly pretending to be happy. I lived in my house for 2 years, enjoying every day. At least once a month, I threw parties for my friends and family. I always invited my family first because I felt guilty and was angry with myself for even allowing the thought that my family was lying to me. Let's fast forward to the main point. It was a warm evening in August. I invited everyone to a party at 7 p.m. My parents and sister arrived 3 hours before the party started. That wasn't like them since they usually like to be late. At first I was happy, thinking they came early to help me out. How wrong I was. We greeted each other and everything seemed fine. My father started talking but suddenly began coughing. It was obvious he was nervous because, in his case, coughing is a clear sign of stress. He always coughs in stressful situations. He said we had something to discuss and then looked at my sister. That's when my sister started talking. So I think everyone in this room understands that the conditions in my dorm aren't ideal, especially for someone in my situation. I'm pregnant, you know. At that moment, my mother chimed in. We've made a decision, and we believe the best thing for you would be to give your house to your sister. It's close to campus, and she'll feel more comfortable living there. I started asking them if they had looked for other options because, to put it mildly, this idea was terrible. This is my house. I said that I could sleep on the couch for as long as needed and let her use my bedroom until she finds a place to rent. But then my mother interrupted me. She said she didn't mean for us to live together. She meant that I should move out, and the house should be transferred to my sister. I blinked, not sure if I had heard her correctly or what. I asked again, and this time my father said that since I'm single, I should move in with my grandmother, who's lonely and could use some company. At that point, I felt anger. I started explaining how I had saved up for years to buy my own house without taking a single penny from the family, to which my sister rolled her eyes and told me to stop being selfish. The conversation ended in awkward silence. Unfortunately, I had to cancel the party because I wasn't feeling well after everything that happened. Over the next few weeks, I received many calls and messages. My aunt cornered me in a grocery store, telling me I was acting like a terrible person. Family helps family. You should be ashamed. I decided I'd had enough and wrote to my toxic family, telling them they need to be more thoughtful. Once again, I was told how awful I am and how I don't care about my sister. We're not speaking at the moment, and I'm not sure how to move forward with them after everything I've heard. I finally realized they're not the people they pretend to be. I have my doubts, and I'd like to hear your opinion. Before the next story, I would like to ask you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let's move on to the next story. If ever there was a dish best served cold, my story of payback was frozen solid before it was finally plated. Straight out of high school, I landed a job at a small but dynamic company we'll call Tech Solutions. With a tight-knit team of just 10 people, we handled specialized projects for local businesses. The owner, Mr. Anderson, treated us like family. He understood the long hours we put in, sometimes clocking over 60 hours a week, and he made sure we were well compensated. Bonuses were generous, perks were plentiful, and he even gave the entire company a paid week off to attend his daughter's wedding. Sure, we had our disagreements like any family does, but overall, it was an incredible place to work. After nearly a decade at Tech Solutions, the managerial position opened up. Being one of the most senior employees, I felt confident about my chances. A few others applied as well, but I thought my years of dedication would give me an edge. However, I didn't get the job. It went to someone who, unlike me, had a degree in business administration. That was a wake-up call. I realized that despite my experience, I needed formal education to climb higher. I decided to pursue a college degree. I sat down with Mr. Anderson to give my 2 weeks' notice, explaining my aspirations. He was incredibly supportive, understanding that I wanted to better myself. He even told me that the door was always open if I wanted to return. Little did I know how pivotal that would be. College life was invigorating, but came with its own set of challenges. While my tuition was covered through grants, I still needed to cover living expenses. After some searching, I landed a part-time job at a retail giant we'll call MegaMart. It was a stark contrast to tech solutions, over 50 employees and a turnover rate that made your head spin. They sold everything from groceries to high-end electronics, catering to a niche clientele who often requested special orders. I started in the warehouse, reporting to the warehouse supervisor, who reported to the general manager, Mr. Thompson. Over time, I moved up to full-time and eventually applied for the warehouse supervisor position when it became available. After a rigorous interview process, I got the job. A few months into my new role, we hired a new warehouse clerk named Kyle. Kyle was efficient, eager to learn, and we quickly became friends. And then came Vanessa. Vanessa started as a cashier but rapidly climbed the corporate ladder by ingratiating herself with anyone who could help her advance, including Mr. Thompson. When a sales associate went on maternity leave, Vanessa jumped at the opportunity to fill in and eventually secured a permanent spot on the sales team. Not long after, she became the sales supervisor. From the moment we met, Vanessa and I were like oil and water. She would report every minor mistake I made to Mr. Thompson, but called me a snitch if I pointed out any issues she caused. She badmouthed me and my team, interrupted me during meetings, and even tried to take credit for my ideas. She openly told colleagues that I was the source of many problems and couldn't wait for me to leave. According to her, nothing was ever her fault. It was always the customer's fault, my fault, the delivery driver's fault, anyone but hers. Despite our differences, there were rare moments when we got along, but they were few and far between. The tension between us was palpable, and it was only a matter of time before things came to a head. One day, an extremely expensive custom-ordered necklace arrived, a piece worth over $5,000. We had strict procedures for handling high-value items to prevent loss or theft. The final step was to take the item to the office and have it placed in the safe immediately. On this particular day, I was the one who received the necklace. After following all the necessary steps in the warehouse, I needed someone with access to the safe to secure it. The only person available was Vanessa. I approached her office and knocked on the open door. "Hey, Vanessa, I need to get this necklace into the safe. Could you help me out?" She glanced up from her computer, her eyes flicking to the jewelry box in my hand. "Just leave it on my desk. I'll put it away once I'm done with this email," she said dismissively. Given our strained relationship and the heated argument we'd had earlier that day, I didn't feel comfortable pressing the issue. I hesitated for a moment, but then placed the box on her desk. "Thanks," I mumbled and left, trusting that she would follow through. The next day, I was summoned to Mr. Thompson's office. Inside were Mr. Thompson, Vanessa, and an HR representative. My stomach dropped. Mr. Thompson's face was grim as he informed me that the necklace was missing. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. "I followed all the procedures," I explained urgently. I handed it over to Vanessa to put in the safe. Vanessa's expression was a mix of feigned concern and subtle triumph. "When I opened the box, it was empty," she stated calmly, producing the box from a drawer. Sure enough, the box was empty. I was stunned. "That can't be. The necklace was in there when I left it with you," I insisted. Mr. Thompson frowned. "Were there any witnesses to this exchange?" I shook my head. "No, it was just the two of us." With no working security cameras, the system had been down for maintenance. It was my word against hers. Vanessa looked at me with a smug expression that said it all. The HR representative cleared her throat. "Given the circumstances, we're left with a serious problem." Mr. Thompson sighed. "Until we can determine what happened, we're going to have to suspend you pending an investigation." "Suspended?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa chimed in. "It's standard procedure in cases like this." I felt the room closing in on me. "I didn't do anything wrong," I protested. Mr. Thompson stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "Please hand over your employee badge and keys. We'll be in touch." I left the office in a daze. Back at the warehouse, I pulled Kyle aside and explained what had happened. His eyes widened in disbelief. "That doesn't make any sense," he said. "I know you wouldn't risk your job over something like this." I gathered my personal belongings, trying to keep my emotions in check. As I exited the building, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been set up. The days that followed were some of the darkest I'd ever experienced. The uncertainty gnawed at me. Would they believe me? Would I be fired? My mind was a whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. I tried to keep myself occupied, but every activity felt hollow. A week later, a certified letter arrived from MegaMart. My hands trembled as I opened it. As I feared, they had decided to terminate my employment due to negligence and the unresolved disappearance of the necklace. They stated that while they couldn't prove I had stolen it, I had failed to follow proper procedures, resulting in the loss. I was devastated. Not only had I lost my job, but my reputation was tarnished. Who would hire someone under these circumstances? I reached out to Mr. Thompson to plead my case one last time, but my calls went unanswered. Desperate and unsure of my next move, I thought of Mr. Anderson. Maybe he could provide a reference or some advice. I gave him a call, and after explaining the situation, he paused thoughtfully. "I'm sorry to hear about all this," he said empathetically, "but perhaps this is a blessing in disguise. As it happens, our manager is retiring soon due to health reasons. We'd be more than happy to have you back, especially with the experience you've gained." I was stunned. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. You've always been a valuable member of the team. Come by the office tomorrow and we'll discuss the details." Relief washed over me. Not only did I have a job prospect, but I had the opportunity to return to a place where I was valued and respected. The next day, I met with Mr. Anderson. The familiarity of Tech Solutions felt like a warm embrace. We discussed the terms, and I accepted the managerial position. It was a fresh start, and I was determined to make the most of it. Meanwhile, Kyle reached out to me. "We need to talk," he said urgently over the phone. We met at a quiet cafe away from prying eyes. Kyle leaned in, his expression serious. "I don't believe you lost that necklace, and I don't think management handled this fairly." I sighed. "I appreciate your support, but without evidence, there's not much that can be done." He nodded. "I know, but I've noticed Vanessa acting peculiar lately. She's been overly friendly with me and my girlfriend Emily. I think she's up to something. Be careful," I cautioned. Vanessa isn't someone to be underestimated. Over the next few weeks, Kyle and Emily started spending more time with Vanessa, under the guise of friendship. Vanessa, always eager to expand her network if it benefited her, welcomed their company. One evening, they invited her over for dinner. Over glasses of wine, the conversation flowed. Vanessa, perhaps letting her guard down, began to boast about her accomplishments and the obstacles she'd overcome to get where she was. "You know," she said with a sly smile, swirling her wine, "sometimes you have to make tough decisions to get ahead. Not everyone is cut out for success." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Vanessa leaned in. "Let's just say some people are better off out of the picture." Kyle played along. "Are you referring to anyone we know?" She chuckled. "Oh, just an old colleague who wasn't up to the task. I had to ensure things ran smoothly, even if it meant making difficult choices." Emily exchanged a glance with Kyle. "Sounds intense." Vanessa shrugged. "Business is cutthroat. You do what you have to do." The evening continued without incident, but Kyle and Emily knew they were onto something. They decided to tread carefully, aiming to gather more concrete evidence. A few nights later, they hosted another gathering, this time suggesting a game night. As the night wore on, Vanessa excused herself to the restroom. Emily seized the moment. "I need to grab something from upstairs," she whispered to Kyle. She quietly made her way to Vanessa's purse, which was sitting on a side table. Feeling a pang of guilt but driven by a desire for the truth, she carefully unzipped a side pocket. Her heart skipped a beat when she felt a small box inside. Gently pulling it out, she opened it to reveal the missing necklace. Suppressing her shock, Emily quickly took photos of the necklace with her phone, capturing any identifying marks. She placed everything back exactly as it was and returned to the group. After Vanessa left, Emily showed the photos to Kyle. "We have proof," she said excitedly. "We need to get this to the authorities," Kyle agreed. The next day, they contacted the police and provided all the information they had gathered, including the photos and a detailed account of their interactions with Vanessa. The police took their statement seriously and initiated an investigation. A week later, Vanessa was arrested at MegaMart, charged with theft and obstruction. The news spread like wildfire through the company. Mr. Thompson called an emergency meeting to address the situation, expressing shock and dismay. I received a call from Kyle shortly after. "They arrested Vanessa," he informed me. "They found the necklace." Relief flooded over me. "I can't believe it. Thank you so much for what you've done." "It was the right thing to do," Kyle replied. "You didn't deserve what happened." Soon after, I was contacted by MegaMart's HR department. They apologized profusely for the misunderstanding and offered me my old job back, along with back pay for the time I'd missed. "Thank you," I told them, "but I've already accepted a position elsewhere." They understood, but the satisfaction of their apology was immense. Weeks later, I was approached by a lawyer who suggested I could sue MegaMart for wrongful termination. After some consideration, I decided to proceed. The case was straightforward given the circumstances, and MegaMart settled out of court, compensating me for damages. As for Vanessa, she faced legal repercussions for her actions. She was convicted of theft and sentenced to time in prison. Her downfall was swift and absolute. Years passed, and life moved on. Tech Solutions thrived under my leadership, and I couldn't have been happier. One day, while reviewing applications for a new position, A familiar name caught my eye, Vanessa Williams. I stared at the application in disbelief. After all these years she was applying to work at Tech Solutions? Part of me wanted to dismiss it outright, but another part saw an opportunity. We scheduled an interview. The day of the interview, Vanessa walked into the office, her demeanor noticeably subdued. Gone was the overconfident woman I'd once known. She looked up and froze when she saw me. "Hello, Vanessa," I said calmly. "Please have a seat." She sat down slowly, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't realize you worked here," she stammered. "I'm the manager," I replied. "Reviewing your application, I see you've had some gaps in your employment history." She swallowed hard. "Yes, I've faced some challenges." I nodded. "I can imagine." There was a long pause. "I want to apologize," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for everything." I considered her words. "I appreciate that," I said. "However, given our history, I don't think it would be appropriate for you to work here." She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand." I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "I wish you the best in your future endeavors." She left the office without another word. As she walked away, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter with Vanessa was finally over, and I could fully embrace the life I'd built, free from the shadows of the past. Back at Tech Solutions, life continued to flourish. Our team expanded, and we took on exciting new projects that pushed the boundaries of innovation. I was particularly proud of a mentorship program we started, partnering with local colleges to provide internships and hands-on experience for students in technology fields. One intern, Maya, stood out with her enthusiasm and fresh perspectives. One afternoon, she approached me with an idea for a project that could revolutionize how small businesses manage inventory. Impressed, I encouraged her to develop a prototype. Maya's project was a success, and we decided to integrate it into our service offerings. Her contribution reminded me of the importance of nurturing talent and providing opportunities, something Mr. Anderson had always emphasized. Life was good, but it had its surprises. One evening, I received an unexpected phone call. On the other end was Brian, a former colleague from MegaMart. His voice was tense as he explained that Vanessa had been released on parole and was trying to rebuild her life. "She's been reaching out to old co-workers, looking for support," Brian said cautiously. "I thought you should know." I thanked him for the heads up, uncertain how to feel about the news. Part of me believed in second chances, but another part remembered the turmoil she had caused. I hoped that our paths wouldn't cross again. A few weeks later, as I was leaving the office late one night, I noticed someone standing near my car in the dimly lit parking lot. As I approached, I recognized Vanessa. She looked different, her once confident demeanor replaced with a subdued, almost fragile presence. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I hesitated but nodded. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to apologize," she began, her eyes downcast. "I know I caused you a lot of pain, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on my actions." I listened silently as she recounted the events from her perspective, admitting to her mistakes and expressing genuine remorse. She explained that she was trying to make amends and hoped to find a way forward. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry." I took a deep breath, weighing my response. "I appreciate you reaching out," I replied carefully. "What you did had serious consequences, not just for me, but for many others. Trust is something that's hard to rebuild." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand. I'm committed to making things right, even if it takes the rest of my life." We stood there for a moment, the silence filled with unspoken words. Finally, I said, "I hope you find the peace you're looking for." She gave a faint smile and turned to leave. As she walked away, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, closure, and perhaps a hint of empathy. Life continued, and our encounter faded into the backdrop of daily routines. Tech Solutions flourished, expanding our team and taking on larger projects. Kyle became a key player in the company's success, and Emily's consulting firm grew rapidly, thanks in part to our ongoing collaboration. One afternoon, Mr. Anderson called me into his office. "I've been thinking about the future of this company," he began. "I'm not getting any younger, and I'd like to start planning for succession." I was taken aback. "What do you have in mind?" "I want you to consider taking over as CEO when I retire," he said with a warm smile. "You've shown exceptional leadership and have the respect of the entire team." I was honored and humbled. "That's a significant responsibility," I replied, "but I would be grateful for the opportunity." "Excellent," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "We'll work together over the next year to ensure a smooth transition." As I left his office, I reflected on the journey that had led me to this point. The challenges, the setbacks, and the unexpected turns. From being wrongfully accused and losing my job, to finding success and fulfillment in a place I considered home, it had been a remarkable ride. In the weeks that followed, we announced the transition plan to the team. The The support and encouragement I received were overwhelming. Kyle joked that he always knew I'd end up running the place, and Emily sent a congratulatory bouquet with a note that read, "To new beginnings and continued success." One evening, as I was organizing some files, I came across a photograph from years ago. It was a group shot from a company event at MegaMart, featuring many familiar faces, including Vanessa. I stared at the photo, contemplating the unpredictable paths our lives had taken. I decided to reach out to a local nonprofit organization that specialized in rehabilitation programs for ex-offenders. With the support of Tech Solutions, we established a partnership to provide training and employment opportunities for those looking to rebuild their lives. It felt like a way to give back and perhaps prevent others from making the same mistakes Vanessa had. At the launch event for the new program, I was approached by a woman who introduced herself as Sarah, one of the program participants. "I wanted to thank you for this opportunity," she said sincerely. "It's not often people are willing to give someone like me a second chance." Her words resonated deeply. "Everyone deserves a chance to turn things around," I replied. As the event concluded, I felt a sense of fulfillment. Life had come full circle in many ways. The challenges I'd faced had shaped me, but they didn't define me. By embracing forgiveness and focusing on positive change, I was able to move forward and help others do the same. Driving home that night, I thought about the concept of revenge. I realized that the best revenge isn't about retribution, but about living well and making a difference. My journey had taught me that resilience, integrity, and compassion are far more powerful than any act of vengeance. Thank you for watching.